The year was 1997. 2 years, 1 week, and one half a week following the death of Jerry Garcia. I was back home in West Virginia. I'd done some Furthur Tour, the first eastern part of the Furthur Tour. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, the Furthur Tour was a tour with the remaining members of the Grateful Dead, each with their individual band, after the demise of the Grateful Dead. And also it included Arlo Guthrie, the Black Crowes, some other acts, Sherry Jackson, Mo, full day's worth of music. Okay, well, I'd already done some of the shows of the eastern part of the tour, and then after coming back to West Virginia, after I was convinced that my presence was ever oh so wanted by certain elder family members, when in fact that could have been further from the truth. But anyhow, I needed to get back out on the road, especially after hearing that there were tornadoes at the show in Wisconsin. It just made me think that even nature was in tune with these shows. So I had to hitchhike. The next shows I could catch up with was in Noblesville, Indiana, which was on the 22nd of July. So I hitchhiked from West Virginia. I left West Virginia with $5 and $5 worth of food stamps, and put my thumb out on the highway and made my way. Got to Noblesville pretty much just in time. The morning of the show, arrived at the venue was Deer Creek. So I arrived there at a campground where some people were camping, caught a ride over to the show from there. Got a miracle ticket into the show that night. It was a great show. After the show, I walked to the nearby campground. Now, Noblesville, Indiana, Deer Creek venue is surrounded by cornfields, and a lot of the farmers rent out land on their property to Deadheads for concerts and other bands now, but originally started with the Deadheads because so many Deadheads came and camped. So there was the names of the campgrounds were Dead Creek and stuff like that. They were even named after the Grateful Dead. So the next show was clear up in Wisconsin, Somerset, Wisconsin, a place I'd never been to before. There were 2 days in between, so, that's a little bit of time, but I didn't want to have to go back out to the interstates and stick my thumb out. Not the ideal way to get around, especially with so many Deadheads already going that way. But I had to get some sleep, so at the campground on the night of the 22nd, I fell asleep, and I woke up to the sound of somebody yelling, "I will pay somebody to ride with me to the next show." Well, this was my great opportunity, so I jumped to my feet, went chasing after the person yelling that, found him, was like, I'll go with you. And he's like, okay, one stipulation. You do have a driver's license, right? Well, the bad thing was my driver's license at the time was suspended due to just an unpaid citation, nothing big, but considering at that time I wasn't really dealing with money, it was a deal. It was a problem. And so I didn't have a driver's license, but I didn't want to blow this good opportunity, and I lied. I'm like, yeah, so. But then I quickly asked him, I was like, you got one, right? I figured as long as one of us had a driver's license, we'd be okay. And he's like, yes. So, okay, well, he has this van, and his name was Squeaky. Now, Squeaky, there's no way to describe him and have you be able to picture the way he was without specifying the fact that Squeaky's manner of speech is what it would be very much stereotypically defined as the speech of a homosexual, but now Squeaky was not. But that's how he talked, so it seemed that way, and he called people baby and sweetie a lot and stuff like that. I don't know, I suppose it could be, like the inner city jazz culture sort of has that way of speech too, but Squeaky even conceded that being as both of his roommates were gay, there's potential that he picked it up a lot from them. Anyhow, so me and Squeaky get in his van, and we start driving, and the vehicle starts sputtering right off the bat. And he's like, maybe we'd better go get this checked out. And I'm like, what do you think's the matter with it? It's your van, right? And he's like, I don't know. So we go into the town of Noblesville, which I'd been to Deer Creek. Haven't been to Deer Creek, never to Noblesville, the little town there. So we sputtered into the town and stalled out on the way in. Well, cops pulled up as we were trying to push the vehicle out of the way, this big van. And the cops pull up, and Squeaky admits for the first time that he doesn't have a driver's license either. And I confess I don't. So now neither of us have a driver's license. And we're like, oh, crap, But the cops are real nice, and they actually even directed traffic while we pushed the van to the side of the road. And after it sat there for a while, we were able to sputter on up to this garage, which this sputtering problem was something I dealt with a little bit before. But we got to the garage, and they said they didn't have time to look at it, but based on what they were seeing, they suspected it was a distributor cap. Well, for better or worse, we decided, okay, Squeaky said he had something over $400 and a distributor cap, we'd go get one. So we drove to a parts store and got the distributor cap. On the way back from the parts store to the garage, it stalls out again. Well, this time, the same cop pulls up, and a city cop and also a deputy sheriff. Okay, so they're like, well, you guys can't be stalling out in the traffic all day like this. And I explained to them, well, we're getting to this garage. We're going to get this fixed. We get to the garage, and because it starts up again after it stalls out, after it sets for a while. And we get to this garage, and the guys say they don't have time to work on it, but they lent us the tools to do it. So anyhow, change out this distributor cap and leave the garage, and don't get very far from it. Going towards the interstate, and it stalls out again. This time, it's the city cop. It's the sheriff, and it's an unmarked vehicle where the guy says he's a detective. All of them descend on us at once, and this time, for the first time, they treat us more like criminals and as people in need of help, so they ask to see driver's license and registration. Well, at this point, we have to confess, neither of us have a driver's license, and at this time, actually, during the course of this, I had learned from Squeaky during the desperation of all this that this wasn't actually his van. His friend had been arrested the night before at the concert with 4 sheets of LSD. So his friend was in jail, and we were in his van attempting to take it out on tour because Squeaky figured, well, his friend wasn't getting out of jail anytime soon, and he wasn't planning on going back to Maryland. So he was just going to finish out the tour with his buddy's van. Well, we told the cops this situation, and they proceeded to begin searching the van, and they say to us, they're like, okay, so this isn't your van, right? And we're like, no, it's absolutely not. And neither of you have a driver's license, right? No, well, actually, no, we don't. So what you're telling us, basically, is that you're both driving around in a stolen van without a driver's license. And like, ooh, it doesn't sound so good when you say it like that. So they say, well, while we're searching this van, if we find anything in this van, so you're saying it's not yours? And we're like, no, it's not. And we're good. So, but the cops say, well, okay, so if we find 2 pounds of marijuana, you're going to say that's not yours? And I said, well, if you were going to give it to us, I might say yes, but since we know that's not the case, we'd be arrested for it, then no, it's not. But in fact, in honesty, it's actually not. So they proceed to search this whole van. Squeaky wasn't too worried because the van had already been searched the night before when they found his buddy's LSD. So there wasn't much danger of it finding anything new in it all. But, there's actually a whole case of Grateful Dead bootleg tapes. And I was like, oh, Squeaky, we shouldn't leave those. And he's like, he couldn't take them in case his friend, could reclaim them at some point from the law. He wouldn't let me have them. So the cops were like, okay, well, they're kind of questioning us, and Squeaky was being real smooth with them, saying, hey, babies, and this is all, sorry about this and all this stuff, talking real smooth to them and everything. So they took off shine to the guy, and they say to us, "So how long you guys been traveling around together?" And we tell them we just met a couple hours earlier. Well, they just found that shocking, and then they're like, "Well, I guess you guys are free to go. We're not going to arrest you, but you're not getting this van. It's getting impounded." And I'm like, okay, well, that sounds like a fair deal to us. We'll just walk away from this. We get a little farther away from the police, and they find a cantaloupe in the van. They're still rummaging through it. One of the cops holds up the cantaloupe and says, "Hey, you guys want this?" And we both look at each other and look at the cop like, "Nah, no, we don't want that." And he's like, "Oh, you don't want this food? This is good food. You don't want it?" And I was like, "We don't have a knife. We don't have plates. What are we going to do, busting on a rock, And like, "Well, if you guys were actually hungry, you would want it." And Squeaky said, "I never said I was hungry, baby. I got $400 in my wallet." So off we go. We get to the interstate. We end up catching a ride with some college-aged guys, and they're headed towards Chicago. From them, we flagged down some other deadheads that we saw. Told the college guys, meet up with them, followed them. We got to a place where we could slow down and talk out the window to them. Told them we wanted to catch a ride in that van with them. They said okay. So we did a switch-off interchange and caught a ride in a van straight up to Somerset, Wisconsin. So when we get up there, first place we come to is this big truck stop. So they pull in and drop us off at this truck stop. And we get out. And we see this guy who's got this nice new truck, big full-size truck, sitting off on the edge of the lot, and he yells over to us, "Hey." And we look over at him. He's like, "You guys want some cantaloupe?" And he holds up a cantaloupe, and this time this guy's got a knife. And we look at each other with a big smile like, well, that's weird. Same day. So we walk over to him. He's like, "Yeah, so we'll have some cantaloupe." He's got something laid out underneath the cantaloupe, but he's cutting the cantaloupe right on the hood there of his car. And he's like, seems nervous about stuff, and was like, his hand is shaking while he's using the knife. And I'm like, "You all right, man?" And he's like, yeah, I'm just stressed out about some things. I got a really bad gambling problem." And so I look at his truck, all nice and shiny and new. I said, "Well, you don't have too bad of a gambling problem. You got this nice truck." And that didn't seem to set his mind at ease at all. Made him look even more scared. So he continues cutting the cantaloupe, though, and hands us a piece of the cantaloupe. And we're eating cantaloupe, smiling at the whole irony of the thing. The reason we didn't take the cantaloupe earlier in the day was because we didn't have a knife. And we kind of thought of that cantaloupe later because we hadn't eaten anything all day. And now here is cantaloupe anyhow. So it looks like we were being provided for. But we looked out on the edge of the highway, come through, cop car, cop car, cop car, cop car, all with their lights on, all descending into this truck stop. We turned and looked at the guy, and he was running and jumped right into the vehicle, looked scared as shit. And we see these cop cars coming in fast. Some of them pull a line in front of us, and guys getting out rifles, like sniper-type rifles, setting up to shoot. And so me and Squeaky, we put our hands up in the air, and cops are getting out of cars and circling around. And they get behind us and lay down on their belly. And next thing I know, I've got a rifle put in between my shoulder blades. And they were like, "What's going on here? What do you guys do?" Well, I'm declaring we didn't do nothing. We just eating cantaloupe with the guy and stuff like that. They said, "We saw you get out of that guy's truck." Like, absolutely, you did not see that. I promise you never saw that. I've never been in that truck in my life. Make a long story short, there's a lot of Indian casinos around Somerset, Wisconsin, and this guy's gambling problem had left him so broken in such a dire situation. He'd stolen a vehicle from a casino, and that's what they were there for. Well, as me and Squeaky get it all sorted out and get us sorted out with the guy, and the guy explains to him he don't know us. He was just met us there and was eating cantaloupe with us, and me and Squeaky told the cops all about our day, how we'd hitched up from Deer Creek, and we even told them all about the vehicle had been broke down and everything like that, and they became captivated by the story, and like we were telling it in its fullest glory, and the cops were all standing around listening and everything and laughing and everything about the cantaloupes and all this, and they say, hey, where you guys going to be camping at? Maybe we can stop by and hang out. And Squeaky's like, nah, baby, I don't think that's a good idea. Well, we won't look very cool if we got cops showing up at our campsite. And so that is the Cantaloupe tale.